It feels like every day that has gone by, a new horrible video from JD Vance has been released. And he has said some pretty terrible and disrespectful stuff, but there's a new video that was just found that might be his worst one yet. In it, he said some terrible things about people without kids that is just way worse than anything we have seen at this point. So in this video, we will recap some of JD Vance's terrible comments about people without kids, and then we'll take a look at this new leak that is just far worse than anything we have seen. So let's start with a recap on all of the things that he has said so far.
When you go to the polls in this country as a parent, you should have more power. You should have more of an ability to speak your voice in our democratic republic than people who don't have kids. Let's face the consequences and the reality. If you don't have as much of an investment in the future of this country, maybe you shouldn't get nearly the same voice. Now, people will say, and I'm sure the Atlantic and the Washington Post and all the usual suspects will criticize me about this in the coming days. Well, doesn't this mean that non-parents don't have as much of a voice as parents? Doesn't this mean that parents get a bigger say in how our democracy functions? Yes, absolutely.
Does it get more alarming than this?
No, it doesn't. One of the things I've beat up on the left about is that so many of their leaders, their next generation leaders, the AOCs, the Cory Bookers, the Kamala Harrises, they don't have kids. And so there's this weird way where they want to take our kids and brainwash them so that their ideas continue to exist in the next generation. And I just say, look, leave your hands off of our children. Stop trying to brainwash them. Parents get to raise their children. Families get to raise their children, not the state, not the leaders of the left. If you want to brainwash children, have your own kids to brainwash. Leave your hands off of mine.
But look, what I was basically saying is that we're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made, and so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too. And it's just a basic fact. You look at Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, AOC, the entire future of the Democrats is controlled by people without children. And how does it make any sense that we've turned our country over to people who don't really have a direct stake in it? I just wanted to ask that question. What I do think is true, Trey, and this goes to the heart of what I was talking about 3 years ago in those comments, but it's going to be something I continue to talk about, is that the left has increasingly become explicitly anti-child and anti-family. If you think about the modern Democrat Party, not the older guys, the Clintons, the Bernie Sanders, the Joe Bidens, but think about Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, AOC, all of these people. It's like a party where the next generation of leaders, none of them have kids, right? And look, I understand some people don't have kids. There are health reasons. There are other reasons people don't have kids. But the entire Democrat Party is like this childless cabal of people who don't really care about the future. And when you call that out, they get so alienated and they get so angry at you that they just start throwing words like racist around. And I think that's what's really going on.
So now that we're all caught up to speed, let's take a look at the new viral video that was unearthed that shows one of JD Vance's worst comments to date. And then we'll talk about it.
Right, there's just these basic cadences of life that I think are really powerful and really, really valuable when you have kids in your life. And the fact that so many people, especially in America's leadership class, just don't have that in their lives, I worry that it makes people more sociopathic and ultimately our whole country a little bit less less mentally stable. And of course, you talk about going on Twitter. Final point I'll make is you go on Twitter and almost always the people who are most deranged and most psychotic are people who don't have kids at home.
Wow, that was just absolutely terrible. I find it hard to believe that those words actually came out of a grown man's mouth. How can you call people without children sociopathic, psychotic, and deranged? Because what about people who want kids who either can't or are waiting to become more stable? What about young adults who are basically still kids themselves? Are they all psychotic to you? And what specifically about people without kids makes them psychotic? Because while sure, there are things that you learn by being a parent, and I'm not trying to discredit that at all, but I think it's insane to think that if you don't learn those things or experience that you are now deranged. Now, I actually have a hypothesis as to why JD thinks this way. You see, I would personally call JD Vance sociopathic, psychotic, and deranged, and I think a lot of people would agree with me on that. So I think what is happening here is that he started to realize that he is those things, but then he started to craft a narrative that said that those things only happen to people without kids, and because he has kids, he said, oh wait, that can't be me because I have kids. So I think he's actually just projecting, because when you look at the difference between someone like JD Vance and Kamala Harris, for example, they are not the same. So as more and more of these videos keep being released, just remember that JD Vance is a psychopath who wants to take away your rights, and he's clearly just projecting to make himself feel better.